The racing of the 35th America's Cup match, presented by Louis Vuitton, resumed on the Great Sound of Bermuda yesterday. After a lackluster start last weekend, the defenders, Oracle Team USA, brought a proper battle to challengers, Emirates Team New Zealand. 4 lead changes, 3 dial downs, 2 penalties, and 1 win each. Here's a look at the day's racing.
New Zealand 3-0 up, the first to 7 wins the America's Cup. USA, with a stripped-down boat to make it lighter, need to close that gap.
There's a lot of stuff missing from the boat, and there's a lot of stuff that's been actually physically changed on the boat.
No, it's definitely slightly different conditions out there today. You know, the breeze is blowing pretty much in the opposite direction as to it was last weekend.
Close on the start line, Oracle Team USA over early.
Recall, Oracle Team USA.
Penalty. The American boat, showing new speed, caught the Kiwis on leg 3, but it was penalty again. Faster boat, but greater instability for USA. Victory to New Zealand. Second race of the day, all clear, and for the first time, Oracle reach Mark 1 in first place. But the lead changed over and over. Nose to nose at gate 5, and Jimmy Spithill sneaked it.
At the top there, boys.
Finally, victory number 1 for Oracle Team USA.
Good work. Here we go. Here we go.
I'm joined now by skipper of Artemis Racing, Nathan Outeridge. We had a proper battle yesterday, both on and off the water. What did you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It was good to see some proper racing out there. I think everyone was very shocked of the first weekend, how New Zealand were really dominant. And Oracle have done a very good job in the space of 5 days to not only improve the performance of their boat, but also they're sailing it much better. I think that first race, if it wasn't for that penalty on the first upwind, I think we were going to have a race neck and neck the whole way around. And I think once they got behind, it snowballed into some big errors in sailing the boat and tactical decisions. I think when you do get behind, it makes it very difficult. But I was very impressed in the second race that Jimmy finally won a start. We've been saying for a long time he needs to get his confidence back. He's known for how good he is at starting, and that start was really good. Obviously, they would be disappointed they let the Kiwis back into the lead, but their comeback and their fighting and their decision making at the top of the course was the reason why they won, and I think they deserved it. And I think moving into today, it's going to be a really good battle with 2 even boats now.
What did you think of their personalities at the end of the day, of the 2 guys?
It was interesting. You saw Jimmy when he crossed the finishing line go and tap all the guys on the shoulder and saying, here we go, and I think he's trying to boost the energy in that team. I think a lot of people have probably been struggling, and it's the first time I've seen him start to believe that he might have a chance of winning this cup, and we know what happened last time when he got that belief. So, if I was a Kiwi fan and a Kiwi sailor, I'd be a bit worried right now.
Well, on shore yesterday as well, the battle continued. Here's the 2 helmsmen at the press conference just after.
No, it was great to see a bit of fight out of these boys. We'd obviously...
It's only just beginning, mate.
First up, Pete, what is it like for you up there in the press conference? What is this mental battle of wits? What's going through your head?
It's all part of it. For ourselves, it's a great opportunity to describe actually what happened out there, and we feel like we had a great battle today. We don't actually feel like we sailed overly well, but it was great to take a race win at the same time, and I feel like we really threw that second race away, halfway up that second beat. But I think that's yacht racing. It's really tricky conditions out there, really puffy and shifty, and if you make a little mistake, you pay for it, and that's what we felt like we did today.
We just heard you give a little quip to Jimmy about them finally bringing a fight to the game. What were your thoughts today on Oracle speed?
Yeah, well, we were honestly pretty surprised, with the way the first weekend unfolded. We felt like we were in a really good space coming out of our final against Artemis, and really race hard. But no, we're in for the battle we kind of expected now, and now we're really looking forward to the next few days.
Okay, speaking of battles, can you explain the dial down? What you're aiming for out of it to the audience?
Yeah, well, the first one, they were in a really tricky spot. When you're sitting above like that, it's really hard to tack and dial down. So, as soon as we saw them tack, we pretty much aimed behind them, and then we're avoiding the whole way from there. So, no, it's something the umpires have said that's what you have to do, and we felt like they got the call right.
Okay, and then the rest of the dial dies. I mean, ultimately, you're always looking for the same thing, looking for that setup?
Yeah, well, the last one was a little bit annoying, It was kind of, we definitely had a few issues on the shift coming in there, but we were just trying to make something happen, and we couldn't do it.
Okay, you've said they started to bring the fight. Are you scared at all? Are you nervous in any way?
No, not at all. This is what we prepared for. This is the battle we expected, so we're really happy.
Yeah, the boat felt great. I mean, we felt it was a lot faster, a lot more competitive. Full credit to the entire team, especially the guys on shore. It's been working very, very hard the whole week. The athletes have been pushed very hard. They've sailed every single day. We've seen these guys take days off, and, we saw that as an opportunity.
How's your mentality now compared to your mentality Sunday night?
Oh, the boys are fighting either way, no matter what, But you can clearly see now they've got some confidence in the boat. The changes we made did work, and we've got to keep taking another step. Again, once I'm done here, we're going out on the water with a couple other things to try. So, the development curve is just as steep during the actual America's Cup, as it is before the racing, leading up. So, yeah, we've got to get out there and we've got to find some more speed.
Okay, so some proper fighting words finally between these two on shore. What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, finally Pete said something interesting in a press conference. He, I think everyone thinks that, he doesn't have much to say, but knowing him very well, he has a lot of interesting things to say, and sometimes he actually can be quite funny. And I think after he said that comment, I think he caught himself saying, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, but it finally got a little bit of a reaction from everyone, and Jimmy, had a great comeback as he always does. So, I think Pete's starting to relax a little bit, and that's good to see. But I think he keeps reminding himself that there is a job here, and the press conference isn't really his thing, and I'm sure the boys would give him a hard time about that one.
I think yesterday in the World Feed as well, the heartbeat of Peter Burling was finally the highest that we've seen it. And Ken Reid said something like, oh, he does have a pulse. So he's got this persona of being cool as a cucumber. But before we talk about the changes maybe that have made Oracle faster and should perhaps make Pete nervous, let's take a look at the differences between the boats.
The defender Jimmy Spithill's USA against the challenger Peter Burling's New Zealand.
This team has been at the forefront of shaping the wing and working their crazy looking foils.
The match is on, the battle lines are drawn, and this is where it all gets tasty.
I think if you had to look at the two boats, Oracle and New Zealand do appear to have a faster package. The Oracle foil is a pretty standard L board that all the teams are using. The New Zealand board is a bit different. It has a kink in it, which means that they can take their light wind boards further up the wind range. You're allowed to change the tips on your boards. So New Zealand have a quiver of horizontals. And the racing around the 10-knot wind range is right between the dagger boards that Oracle have, and New Zealand seem to have a much smoother transition with all their boards. And I think that's the main difference between the two dagger boards. The biggest difference between the wings is Oracle have gone for the traditional approach of a wing sheet. Kyle has to trim it with one hand, and he has a bunch of buttons to do the full twist adjustment. Whereas New Zealand have gone down the route of having everything hydraulically. So the wing sheet comes on and off with push buttons, or a Game Boy controller looks like what Glenn has in his hands. And he has the ability to play sheet, to play twist, to play camber, all at the touch of his fingers. And with the hydraulic power that's being produced by the bikes, it's like he's got energy on tap.
The biggest difference that's noticeable is obviously the bikes versus the hand pedestals. We've got somewhat of a hybrid system. We have the single bike at the back for Tom. I don't think it'll be the deciding factor. I think the control system, the design of the foil shapes, and ultimately how the crew sails the boat will be the big ones.
Yeah, they've got their little unicycle on the back there, and I think it's pretty obvious your leg muscles are a lot bigger than your arm muscles, and when you need those big spikes and those big hits of power during things like manoeuvres, we can definitely throw it around and never really run out of resource.
The third biggest difference between the two boats is how the boats actually fly. Oracle have the same approach as all the other teams in that the helmsman flies the boat while driving the boat. The Kiwis have gone down a very different route. It appears as if they almost have like an autopilot on the boat. And Blair Tuke, the fourth bicycle rider, is focused on this display that we all want to know what is on it. It basically looks like he's trying to keep one line on top of another line, and if you can match the two lines together, the boat has this magic carpet auto ride height control. And so it's really freed Pete up to be a tactician and a driver, something that the rest of the helmsmen and Jimmy would not be able to do.
If you talk to anyone in this team, you know, they'll say there's a couple of things that, you know, everyone can see that are very innovative, but there's probably another 50 that people can't see. We do have an incredible tool here to use, and we're really excited about, you know, being able to get out there and throw it around.
Okay, so that was basically the differences as the boats stand, and still is probably the main differences between the two boats. But what were the changes that Oracle was able to make over their 5 days off to then ultimately be at least as quick yesterday?
I think a few things they've been focusing on is trying to improve the boat's performance in the lighter wind range. So Jimmy said yesterday, confirmed what we all thought, that they took the bike out of the back of the boat. Obviously that thing is an additional way to add power to the boat, and by taking it out is going to save some weight. So there's like a 1 kilo, 100 kilo tolerance for maximum minimum weight, and the rumour has that they were close to maximum, and I think they're trying to get down to minimum to help their light wind performance. So reducing the boat's weight is one way they've improved performance, and the other big one is adjusting the foils. So yesterday they used what we all know as their high wind dagger boards, or their high speed dagger boards, in around 10 to 12 knots, which is right around the crossover. Last weekend they used day 1 light wind boards, day 2 heavy wind boards, and from what I understand they've tried to optimise those boards to go down range better. I think they've added area, added span, so they've actually increased the amount of lift they get from those boards, which has helped their foiling tacking. And I think they've also changed the geometry at which that board sits in the boat. And all in all, what it's done is it's made the boat harder to sail. It uses more oil, and taking the bike off obviously is also producing less oil as well. So they've got a faster boat now, but it's much harder to sail than it was last weekend.
Much trickier. But they've also got some things in their arsenal they haven't been using. As you said, starts is something that Jimmy, the pit bull Spithole, is supposed to be known for. He hadn't gotten off the starting line first at all until the final race of the day. So talk us through the 2 starts yesterday. Yeah,
the two starts was interesting. The New Zealand wanted to lead back in both starts, so there was one port start for each team, and Jimmy was always the aggressor. He was pushing a lot harder than he was before, and I thought he did a really good job in both starts of getting New Zealand early to the line, slowing both boats down and taking that windward advantage. But as we saw, you know, race 1, they were early, and it's so difficult to judge when to get the boat going, and you know, at 5 seconds to go you've got to put the bow down to get it going, and we rely really heavily on software. And from what I understood in the press conference, he said the software let them down. Software said they were fine, but they were actually over. So you know, you've got to know your software well, and you can't really blame the software when you are over, but it's all part of the development process. And the second start, it was really a carbon copy of the start before, but this time their time on distance was better. So I think he's got his confidence back. I think he's understanding and controlling the starts better than he was before. And so if they can just work on that software bug that they had overnight, then I think, you know, he'll be able to win both starts today.
Okay, the other main turning points in the races were the dial downs. I think we saw 3 or 4 dial downs during the racing yesterday, one of which ended up with a penalty for Oracle Team USA. What happened there?
Yeah, the dial downs are, you know, the starboard tacker is always trying to increase their lead over the port tacker, and so every time you dial down, you're forcing the port tack boat to aggressively bear away and hopefully come off the foils. The incident where they got the penalty, Oracle were approaching the boundary, and so they had to tack. You know, in a normal situation you would never tack in that position because you're really vulnerable for the dial down. And so by tacking, New Zealand knew what was coming, lined it up from probably a minute out, and Pete did a great job of getting down. You're not allowed to go below 90 when hunting them down, and he sat probably at about 85 for long enough to make the umpires believe that he was going to hit them. And I think it's a bit of a game of chicken, who's going to alter first, and it looked like you know, Oracle didn't do enough to avoid that situation and got penalised because of it.
You know, I asked Richard Slater, the chief umpire, this morning to talk me through the scenario. He said that, yeah, he said ultimately with Oracle advanced at that point, Oracle was a bit ahead, and as you said, Pete Burling dialed them down really nicely, that their option was out, either tacking or up across the bow. But at that point, when they came out of the boundary, Pete was already with his bow so below Oracle's that for Jimmy to then cross and try to get below him, he was crossing through the line of fire like twice almost. So his option was out and up and not down the way they went. And so Pete had done a really nice job, I think, while Oracle was tacking him beforehand, as you said a minute earlier, to tee it up and draw the penalty and make Oracle slow. So it was ultimately a triple threat for them.
Absolutely, and I think the dial down is most effective when the starboard tack boat is further back. So if you have a small piece of them, the dial down is going to be really advantageous. If it's bow on bow or the starboard tack boat's going to cross, the dial down's usually not as effective. So it was clear on the TV graphics and on the umpire app watching it back that Oracle were really close to making the cross, and that's the perfect time to do and dial down. And you know, we had a few scenarios like that with Pete in the final, and you know, he was often on the receiving end of those, and I think we might have taught him a thing or two there, and it was really good to see him put it into action and win a race because of that manoeuvre.
But then again, as you say, in the second race, the same scenario happened. Team New Zealand on starboard, Oracle on port. But with Oracle much less advanced, much further behind, the dial down wasn't nearly as big of a drama. There was a protest from Oracle. It was green flagged. And in fact, maybe Oracle had even gained out of it because they were behind to begin with. We've actually just seen Oracle take off for practice. We saw Emirates Team New Zealand right before we lined up. So the two boats, both nervous today, both out practicing early this morning. What do you think that means?
I think it means they just want to make sure that any changes they've made to the boat overnight are going to work. These boats are incredibly complicated with their software. I wouldn't be surprised if Oracle are out there putting marks in the water, working on their race software for the starts. We also saw they made a big error with a ley line to the bottom mark, and listening to the onboard, it sounded like they were trusting the software. They jibed on the software and it was completely wrong and they lost the lead. So I think that's what Oracle are going to be focusing on out there this morning.
Okay. Predictions for the day?
Looking at the forecast, it looks a similar forecast to yesterday. Looking at the boats when they left the dock, the configuration looks the same. So, you know, I'm calling one race each, but I think that's not enough for Oracle to get back into this event.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Nathan. Great to have you.
Yep, cheers.
So the scoreline is currently 4-1. Challengers Emirates Team New Zealand lead over Defenders Oracle Team USA in this first to 7-point series. Weather for today, 8 to 12 knots from the south-southwest. Let's see if the Americans can continue their comeback or if Emirates Team New Zealand can get to match point today. Racing starts again, 2 p.m. local.